Joining us for more, we have Professor Kobi Michael, Senior Research Fellow of the Institute for National Security Studies, former Director General of the Israeli Ministry of Strategic Affairs. And in studio, we have political analyst and consultant Shai Bazak. He's also the former Israeli Consul General in Miami and Boston. But let me start with you, Professor Michael, about how you see the strategic aims of this operation, given the parameters that have been set for it.
I'm not sure that there are strategic aims, and this is maybe the main problem that we are facing, because there is no I would say any prospect to a military operation without a political envelope, without a political aim. And I'm not sure that I understand what is exactly the political aim of the government in this regard. Because we will finish the operation in 2 or 3 days, and we will succeed in cleaning Jenin. And what then? The Palestinian Authority is not able to come and to control effectively the space, and we don't want to remain there. So we will withdraw from there, and we will create a vacuum, and the vacuum will be filled immediately. So what will be at the end of the day? And I think that this is the most problematic issue.
Right, and Shai, Professor Michael raising the political dimension here. There are many in the government calling for an even major operation. That's not how the IDF is defining this in order to deal with the situation of Jenin. Will it satisfy those voices in the current government, in the coalition?
So, if the political goal is to...
I'm sorry, I was addressing that question to Shai Bazak in studio, Professor.
Okay, sorry.
Oh, of course. So the distinguished doctor, of course, and he's right on the strategic level. And as you spoke about the political level, there are all kind of pressures from all around. But we can all agree that this kind of operations, which happened frequently, bigger or smaller, in the Gaza Strip, in Judea and Samaria, I think the best way to call it is maintenance. Okay, we have to maintain the situation. There are terror attacks coming recently, more and more frequently from Jenin and the area. Iran is stretching their arms by operating through the Jenin operators. So the IDF is taking care of it, at least for now. Of course, it doesn't give the big answer that Dr. Michael addressed, of course, of what's a political strategic aim toward the end. And of course, it doesn't answer completely the extreme right-wing parties in the government who said, let's go and make a very big a military operation, and not to the other side who talk about the solution with the Palestinians. This kind of stuff is maintenance. We have to do them. We cannot keep suffering from terror attacks without of course, do something about it, but it's not giving the big answer for everything. If everything goes according to plan, no complications, within 24 hours, 48 hours, it's all going to be behind us. It will take down a bit the flames from Jenin area, and we are going to continue to the next operation. The big questions will remain for the next one.
Professor Michael, there is a specific, let's say, tactical aim here, which is we've seen attempted rocket fire from Jenin. Just in the past couple of weeks, we've seen the use of roadside bombs. And it seems like the IDF is focusing on at least trying to temporarily nullify that capacity.
It looks that the technical capacities are not there yet, because we are there, and as Shai said before, we are mowing the grass all the time, and we are not enabling them to develop the capacities, although the knowledge exists and the motivation exists. But we have to understand that the rockets that were launched, not in the first time, by the way, is not only an operational issue. This is a cognitive issue, and this is a cognitive issue not only vis-a-vis the Israeli public, but also vis-a-vis the Palestinian public. This is something that signals to the Palestinian constituency, yes, we can. We can tackle the mighty IDF. We can continue the armed resistance. This is the right way. And actually, by launching the rockets, they are fueling the armed resistance ethos of the Palestinians, and they are recruiting more and more youngsters that join participating the terror attacks and the terror activities, and they gain more and more legitimacy and motivation from the Palestinian constituency, and they are weakening further and further the Palestinian Authority.
All right, Professor Michael, I'm going to ask you to just hold off for a minute. I want to go to our reporter, Jonathan Regev, our defense correspondent, who's at the Salim checkpoint. Jonathan, what's the update on the situation with this operation?
So the situation now is that the forces, the Israeli forces, are waiting to enter deeper into the Jenin refugee camp. That activity is perhaps expected later on in the day. Engineering forces are clearing the roads. We know there are many IEDs that were waiting for the forces. And earlier today, we spoke with Lieutenant Colonel Richard Hecht, the IDF international spokesperson, about this operation, how long we can expect it, what are the goals. Let's listen to what he had to say.
So right now, as we started this focused counter-terrorism event last night, which started off with a surprise from the air, focused on their command and control centres and depots and munition depots. Right now, there's been movement of forces that are surrounding the camp. The focus is on the camp and trying to dismantle the terrorist infrastructure there. Again, we're focused on infrastructure. There may be reactions in other places. We're ready for all developments and how this thing unfolds. Again, we're in the midst of it. We're looking also at the north, also at the east, and also at the south.
Focused on infrastructure. These are the words, meaning the IDF is looking for those makeshift laboratories where the IEDs are made, where maybe even rocket launchers are being made. We've seen that activity, the IED which exploded under an Israeli armored car less than 2 weeks ago, the rockets that were attempted to be fired to the air here in the area of Jenin. This is exactly what the IDF is looking for. Dismantle those laboratories. This is the main activity now in the Jenin refugee camp.
All right, Jonathan Regev, we'll come back to you. We are going to be going out for a break. We have an update now. Palestinian health sources now saying that at least 8 Palestinians killed since the start of this military operation or action, however one defines it, taking place in Jenin. I'm going to ask Professor Kobi Michael and Shai Bazak to stay with us. We'll be right back after a short break, more on continuing coverage of the IDF military action in Jenin. We're on the inside of political and religious passions in Jerusalem, breaking down the financial trends shaping the global economy, giving you key context, not just headlines, with the stories from Israel that touch the U.S. and those across the region with impact far beyond its borders. Catch the rundown where the Middle East meets the world.
The Middle East is changing. Old alliances make way for new partnerships.
Bigger threats lead to new relationships, and shared goals mean new opportunities.
We speak to those who know the inside story.
Or those who are at the heart of the changes. Don't get caught up with the same old story.
Find out what's happening in Middle East Now.
Middle East Now, every weekday on I-24 News.
Sometimes it's tough to get past all the noise and get to the heart of the story. Even tougher to make sense of it all. I'm David Matlin, and each weekday I'll take on the most important topics, breaking down the issues so you can decide for yourself. Zoom in each weekday here at I-24 News.
Frases que sabes desde dónde vienen.
Ven acá, ¿y el paquetico pa' cuándo?
Y recargas que ya sabes hacia dónde van. Envía recargas internacionales Altis a tu gente en RD. Accede a nuestra página web recargas.altis.com.bo. Selecciona recargas y digita el número al que deseas colocarle la recarga. Además, ellos reciben el doble de balance en recargas de $8 o más.
Altis, la red global de los dominicanos.
Well, welcome back to I-24 News, our special breaking news edition. We're covering the ongoing IDF operation or military action in the West Bank city of Jenin. Latest update, 8 Palestinians killed since that began in the early hours of today. Let's go back to our defense correspondent, Jonathan Regev at the Salem checkpoint in the West Bank. And Jonathan, one of the issues here is whether I should call this a operation, a military action, or I believe Richard Heck, that used just the IDF international spokesperson, called it a counterterrorism event. And there's also a lot of confusion about if this is an operation and about what it is. What is its name? At least what is its name in English?
The answers to all these questions is, I do not know. I don't know, simply because there are no clear guidelines. This is obviously an operation, but Israel does not want to specify or define this as an operation. Why? Maybe because operation sounds something big, which may anger the Americans or the Saudis or the Emiratis or the Europeans. But Israel prefers at the moment not to define this as an operation, but as an intensive counter-terrorism activity. Let's define it this way. That is why even the name, which in previous cases, even in the last operation in Gaza 2 months ago, it was pretty much the first thing that was defined is what is the name in Hebrew, a very clear name in English. Now there's no name in English. The name in Hebrew, Bait Vagan, meaning home and garden in English, that doesn't really catch in Hebrew, does not catch at all in English. Therefore, are we dealing with an operation or with intensive activity? I don't know. I don't even know if there's a name. It's very vague. Let's call it this way.
All right, John. Of course, Jerusalemites will know Beit Vagan as one of the nicer neighborhoods in the capital. I'm not quite sure. I think there's a computer that picks these names, why they chose it. Jonathan Regev there at the Salem checkpoint. Still with us, Professor Kobi Michael, Senior Research Fellow at the Institute for National Security Studies, and Shai Bazak, political analyst and consultant. Shai, maybe the confusion about the name is in a sense reflects a broader, I don't say confusion, but indecision about how far this operation is supposed to go, and also trying looking at the international dimension. We know that the U.S. administration already is not happy with Israeli other actions in the West Bank or actions of Israelis, and not wanting to make too big a deal of it internationally in the concern over relations with the Biden administration.
Yeah, it's all, of course, as you mentioned, part of the bigger picture. Absolutely. Political situation is like that the government want to show a part of its coalition, the right-wing one, that they do an operation as big as they can, working as they demand against a Palestinian terrorist. Toward the international arena, Israel doesn't want to look like they're making a big deal, because then everybody starts to interfere and to look in the pot and to measure the activity. So it's a big part of all this picture. Of course, we have the dispute that's running today. Again, all kind of demonstrations against the judicial reform or revolution, as they call it here in Israel, that didn't end yet, and we don't know where it goes to. It goes by the coalition, which part of it try to maintain the international political situation of Israel among the nations, and others said we don't care about anything, we just have to move on because we have the majority of right-wing, they have extreme, they have ultra-Orthodox, and the moderate, and all together coming together to a picture that's express itself also in military operation like that, which mainly running by the Minister of Defense and the army. It's not about the political arena, and it's something that everybody unify behind it. The opposition, of course, and everybody, all the people of Israel know that something has to be done. So yeah, right. Complication is part of the picture.
And Professor Michael, part of that complication is, I think, you mentioned the Palestinian Authority before. The IDF specifically mentioning in its statement today, this is not an operation against the Palestinian Authority, but against terror groups in the West Bank. On one hand, we've heard in the past week or so, sort of a change in tone among some members of the government about the PA. Prime Minister Netanyahu reportedly saying Israel needs the PA. Similar comments expressed by the Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, where you have other people such as the National Security Minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir, and others who define the PA as an outright enemy. And that falls in this picture of how Israel is going to deal with Jenin.
There is no doubt that the Palestinian Authority, or a functioning and reliable Palestinian Authority, is an Israeli strategic asset and need. And as you said, Prime Minister Netanyahu just yesterday or the day before yesterday said it cut and clear. The problem is that the government of Israel doesn't do anything in order to assure that the Palestinian Authority will remain a strategic asset of Israel, but on the contrary. And I think that following the conversation about the vague, I would say, attitude of Israel with regard to this operation, is it an operation or not an operation? This is an indication to the very problematic strategic position that Israel finds itself in the opening of this operation, because we are facing a situation where the Palestinian Authority almost does not exist. We are facing a situation where we have a very problematic relations with our strategic asset, which is the United States of America. We are in a very problematic situation in the domestic arena in Israel, and we are in a very problematic situation with regard to the strength of Hamas and its dual strategy, that we are creating a comfort zone for realizing this strategy. And therefore, I think that our point of departure is very problematic, very complicated, and I think that this is the time that Israel has to decide what actually it wants.
All right. Well, speaking of the Palestinians, earlier I did speak about the operation with Ashraf al-Ajami. He's the former Palestinian Authority Minister for Prisoner and Ex-Prisoner Affairs. This is what he had to say.
I think the Israeli side doesn't understand that the issue is the occupation and the aggression from the Israeli side. And if they also will kill 10 or more Palestinians in Jenin, they won't end the situation, because the occupation, the settlement activities, the provocation and aggression from the settlers and the attacks on the Palestinian villages, this is something that Palestinians cannot sit aside and just observe what happens in the Palestinian territories. And I think they didn't learn from the lessons of the past, from what happens in Jenin, what happened in Jenin in 2002, and now we repeat the situation. It will be more difficult and more maybe damages for the two sides. Without having a political horizon, nothing can be done. And the Palestinian Authority is in a very bad situation nowadays because of lack of a political horizon, and the Israeli invasions in Area A, which is under the Palestinian Authority civil and security control. The situation is very bad, and the Israelis cannot help themselves and Palestinians with these attacks and this aggression within Jenin and other areas in West Bank.
Well, the expected reaction from Ashraf al-Ajami, the Palestinian Authority. Shai Bazak, you mentioned the protest today. I just want to comment. We did see the protests against the judicial reforms. We did see protests at the Haifa port this morning. We are still expecting a rally at Ben Gurion International Airport later today, starting around 5:30 p.m. local time. I'll briefly read you just a comment from the parts of the comment from the protest movement. Our hearts were with the soldiers soldiers of the IDF and the security forces now working against the terrorist organizations. Our job as citizens is to preserve democracy and protect the values of the Declaration of Independence. As long as the government continues with the dictatorial legislation, tonight's protest at Terminal 3 will take place as intended. And the government, it did say earlier, it is going ahead with its discussion in the Knesset about one part of the judicial.
Even today, even this morning, yes.
Yes.
So all sides continue as usual on this, and while the IDF is fighting in Jenin, part of our life in this very hot
One wonders though if there shouldn't be a timeout, at least while IDF troops are in action there in Jenin.
From all sides, but it seems like the political issues are above all these situation of today, even a military operation.
Even a military operation. Professor Michael, I want to stay on security, but move briefly to the northern frontier, where the Hezbollah terror movement overnight evacuated one of the tents that had set up in that Mount Dov area south of the so-called Blue Line, the recognized border internationally between Israel and Lebanon. Now, of course, Israel has said if Hezbollah did not take the 2 tents down, it would take military action. Israel has been trying to resolve the issue through diplomatic means at the UN, so far unsuccessfully. It does seem as if Hezbollah is testing Israel in that area at a time when it's preoccupied both in the West Bank and also with some of the domestic issues we just spoke about.
Yes, you are totally right. And this is another trial of Hezbollah to go on the edge. Another indication with regard to their, I would say, level of self-confidence with regard to Israel. It began with Megiddo attack, and it continues with some other provocations where the 2 tents are another event in this series. And I think that Israel should be very determined in this regard. I think that Israel operates in the right manner when it tries to evacuate these 2 tents by using the diplomatic channels. But if it will not work, Israel will have to do it by using force, and to take into consideration that this is something that might drag Israel and Hezbollah to a sort of a military friction. I believe that at the end of the day, if Hezbollah will understand that Israel is determined in this regard, and if they will perceive Israel as reliable with regard to its threats on Hezbollah, they will evacuate the other tent that was left in the area as well.
Right. And also a test for this government. This government, which came into office promising Israel security, being tested on several fronts now, Shai.
In many fronts, and that was mainly the main promise of this government. They claim against the previous government, which held around a year and a half, that they are soft on terrorism, they are soft with the Palestinians, soft against the violent and crime in the Arab sector. And they said, Netanyahu, remember, in the election campaign said, we will take care of it. We're going to be a right-wing government, and we will take care of everybody. Itamar Ben-Gvir said, we are going to show them who is the balabait, who is the master
of the house.
Master of the house. So now we see that, life is stronger than everybody. Left-wing, center, right-wing governments, we are all facing the same issues. You expect the politicians to be a bit modest and to understand that this is not a political issue. No one from left or right is not standing in position that he doesn't want to fight terrorism or doesn't do his best to do it. It's just a situation that we have to handle carefully and with resilient, and not taking it to a political issue. It shouldn't be one of these.
Well, certainly the government being tested today in Jenin with this operation. Shai Bazak, Professor Kobi Michael, thank you for that.